All right, well, then I'm going to be quiet and take it away. Hey guys, good morning. Kyle and Eric are with us this morning, mostly because we wanted to talk about working with VA buyers. Eric, I think you bumped into Allison at Regional Raleigh. You're like, hey, can we cover this topic? Kyle has just been doing training with Renee Rodriguez, so I wanted to make sure he had a platform to like come and share. And I was like, oh, this is perfect. Like two, like in my opinion, like powerhouse, like do it probably better than anyone. Very like present online, talking about what veteran buyers need. And anyway, so I wanted to turn it over to you guys. I've given you permission to screen share. I know, Kyle, you might have some things that you want to share. Like, totally up to you guys. You're welcome to share. And I hope, guys, like, give them a chance to get going and present some things, but like, please, like, also interrupt. Like, I'll monitor the chat for you guys. So, like, if you have questions you want to ask in real time, that's really what this is about. So if it goes a totally different direction than they planned, then that's what Wednesday mornings look like here. So thanks, guys, for
Right.
giving us your time this morning. I had agents on my team yesterday being like, I sent a screenshot to a client saying that I was going to be on this because they're about to go get their pre-quals done at Navy Fed for their VA loan. So I appreciate you sharing your insight and your expertise. So I'll turn it over to you guys. And thank you so much.
Kyle, you want to? I'll let Kyle lead. I'll
Okay.
take.
Well, sweet. Yeah. I'm Kyle. I'm in Pinehurst. So I really truly believe that you shouldn't have to be struggling for money after you retire from the military in 20 years. Um, and it really that sparked a story for me because when it was July, what was it, 7th? I should know this, 2019. I'm sitting in an outstation in Syria and just all my bags are packed. The next day, I'm getting ready to go home to see my firstborn Kenton be born. And I was like, man, I'm so stoked, so stoked. I'm sleeping. It's 4 a.m. in the morning, and I'm just getting phone call after phone call after phone call after phone call just from my wife not picking up because it's, like 8 a.m. that time, our time, right here in North Carolina. So I was like, man, she just, whatever. She's not due for another 3 weeks. Like, we have plenty of time, nothing. Well, then I get pounded on my door from my team sergeant, and he's
Yeah.
like, "Dude, are you picking up the phone?" Finally, I picked up, and it's my wife, literally in the delivery room, um, like having our firstborn kid, and I have the picture here. I'll show you. Like that is how I watched my firstborn child, be born, Kenton. And now he's 6 years old, about to be seven, and just thriving, right? And if you've met my kids, they are literally insane. I now have three of them, and that's luckily the only one I've ever missed. Um, but that really sparked the passion in me of utilizing this VA loan and the tools it has that many veterans don't understand how to utilize effectively to grow wealth and grow passive income personally, but then really educating buyers because it's one of the most underutilized loans. I think there's 22 million veterans that are eligible to use the VA loan, but only 2 million are currently out there. Like
Yeah.
that's insane for us, right? Like especially as agents, it's one of the most securely backed loans. And it's just gets a lot of unfortunate myths that I think if we
Mhm.
just empower our agents to help solve and preempt those, we can do our clients such a great service for that. And that's my goal here is we leave with, I'm sure Eric is going to have a lot more like stats and stuff like that and stuff. My goal is that you guys leave with being able to educate your buyers, but also be able to educate your sellers if you don't use these all the time. Because Eric and I are both, I mean, we're 20 minutes away from each other, and
Mhm.
VA loans are rampant here. Like everyone knows VA loans because we're by the biggest army base in America and of Fort Bragg, right? So it's very common here. All the agents use them, all the lenders know them. But if you're
Yeah.
somewhere else that you don't use them a lot, like your knowledge and being able to educate those seller agents, I think is going to help you guys so much.
Yeah. I would have to piggyback off of what Kyle is saying. The first time I used my VA loan was straight out of I was out of grad school. I had already went into the military right out of high school, came right out, finished up undergrad, grad school, and I purchased my first home. Literally, they gave me. I had a letter from Nortel Networks that said, "Hey, you've been hired," and I had my loan approved based on that. And I was 23. years old. So, it was like mind blowing. I didn't even have a real job yet other than a signed letter for the VA loan. And the VA loan, as Kyle was saying, is one of the most underutilized loans out there. Question for everyone. Look, I know we're in North Carolina. Which county has the largest amount of veterans? Anybody? Take a guess. Anybody? We like interaction here. Kyle and I do, but I'm just saying. But we can't hear you, Anna. Which county?
No, I was laughing because I know the game of smoking these people out. So smoke them out.
Smoking them out.
How about Fairfax County, Virginia?
So let's use North Carolina for us. So let's use North Carolina. Sorry,
Janet. Good guess, Janet.
But that's a great guess, Janet, because there are so many. So I'll make it easy for you guys. The largest amount of veterans there's about 50,000 veterans in Wake County, right? So 50,000 veterans. And if we take what Kyle said before about the percentage that's being used now, everyone always thinks, of course, Cumberland County, right? Because that's where Fort Bragg is. Now, Fort Bragg has about 38,000, but what's the difference? In Wake County, we have about 1.2 million people, right? Versus Cumberland County, where we have only 60,000 people. So you're really looking at about 18-20%, so that's where the difference is. And that's why we see so much of it here in, the Cumberland County and of course, Pinehurst, Southern Pines and those areas. But the VA loan, and when I tell you one of the biggest, Kyle, let's cover the biggest misconceptions about the VA loan. Let's start there. Number one, that you can only use it once. That's probably the number one, because I don't know about you, Kyle, but a lot of my Army buddies, they were always saying, I'm gonna wait to use my VA loan to do what? Build my dream home, which they can use it over and over again. I think I'm on my third use of my VA loan. So that's one. You're four, Kyle?
Fourth or fifth. Yeah.
Fourth or fifth. Look, we lose count. We can't even remember because we're using it over and over again. The last time I used it was when we bought our home here in Wake County, where the interest rates at the time during COVID, so I'm sitting on a 2.25 interest rates, right? So a lot of folks are sitting on these lower interest rates. And one of the other pieces of the VA loan that people don't really realize is the assumability of it. I've done 6 VA loan assumptions in the last year. So if you have a VA client, you're doing a disservice. If that home has a VA loan on it, you're doing a disservice if you don't advertise the loan assumption portion of that. Kyle, have you done some of the loan assumptions as far as advertising it out?
Yeah, I haven't had buyers pull the trigger because typically that equity gap is too big. Obviously we have to bring that equity gap. If you guys don't know, like it's for the assumable of the loan. So my most recent example, we had a seller selling a house for $700,000 because he utilized the VA loan like I did and forced appreciated it, and his loan was $300,000. So that person was gonna have to bring almost $400,000 in cash or a secondary loan to the table, which for a veteran that's like not unheard of, but at that point, why not go conventional or a different loan product at that point too?
Yeah. So, and I think Janet has a question for us, Kyle.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janet.
So is it assumable by somebody who's not a veteran?
Aha. So Janet, that is a great question. So the VA loan can be assumed by anyone, right? But here's the caveat. There's a caveat to that. So most of the time, the veteran is going to want the assumable loan to be assumed by another veteran so we can substitute their entitlement for the other entitlement, because that's going to be the most important, especially if they're planning on moving. Now, I've had some assumables where the veteran had passed away, so they left, it was no big deal because they weren't going to use it again because it already was left with the home. So the person was able to assume it from there, right? So that was one of the, I've done 6 assumptions in the last 18 months. I just closed one about 3 weeks ago. And the big piece of that was they had a 3.5 interest rate, but the gap, like Kyle was talking about, was only like $30,000. So that was an easy lift for someone to move in and get a 30. Because remember, on a VA loan assumption, you step right into where they are. So if they've got 20 years left on the loan, you step right in there. You have to get approved through that lender who's servicing that loan. You step right into there and you just have to cover the gap. Now, the beautiful thing about the VA loan assumption, if you have a property that, when you did your numbers, might be just a tad bit overpriced, there's no appraisal. when you do a VA loan assumption. So that's one of the great pieces there because you're assuming the loan and the servicer already has it. So that's, a huge piece of it. Now, it can be assumed by a non-veteran, but what you want to do there is if the seller is selling it and they're open to it, you want to make sure you calculate what their eligibility is remaining. Like, let's say they're moving to Fairfax, Virginia, right? If they're moving to Fairfax, Virginia, they have a lot more purchasing power up there. So guess what? They can still leave a portion of that entitlement and then take the rest of it and still purchase a home there. So depending on what their financial situation is, you can actually use it to working because a lot of times veterans and Kyle knows this. If you're getting an 100% financing in the market, Fayetteville used to be a market that we didn't bubble, we didn't burst. We just were a flat line, no appreciation really, right? So when veterans would get into these homes and after COVID, then we started seeing, and I'm sure, Kyle, you've seen it in Pinehurst and Southern Pines, the appreciations went through the roof. But before then, we had some veterans who, when they bought the home 10 years ago, it was worth about the same amount that they bought 10 years ago. So that led into an issue of, especially if you're 100% and then you have the VA funding fee on top of that. Mm-hmm. So really, you're really in the negative, but not really in the negative. So that's why you have a lot of rentals in our area too, because people are maintaining it, and you can use a partial. A veteran can buy a home here, still have entitlement, buy another home. I had one guy who bought 3 different homes using his same entitlement. He had one in Kline, he had one in Gordon, and then when he purchased here, when I sold him a property here, but he had to bring, there was about 100,000 that was over his entitlement. So he just he did 20% on that 100,000. So he put $20,000 in. So that's it. Ed?
So are you saying that a veteran, this entitlement is a specific amount as opposed to just the fact that they are entitled to use those services? They're entitled to a specific amount, and if they don't use it on their initial purchase, they have availability of additional funds to use for additional purchases?
Yeah, I'll take it. Yeah. So that's one of the biggest misconceptions. Like I had at one point 2 VA loans out, right? Because I use it to grow wealth, kind of like what his example was. Like I'll do live in flips with my wife, bless her heart. Like she would let me buy a house that needed forced appreciated that met the VA guidelines. I'd renovate it completely, live in it for 2 years, and then sell it on the back end with the VA loan, 0 money down. And I made all that money. That's what really led to me growing my real estate portfolio as an investor. But you have that typical entitlement, and I think the average, right now it's like $832,000, like in 700, I have it, $832,750 of entitlement. Now you get a quarter of that, right? And so what that looks like is if you haven't used it all, whatever you haven't used is still there. Now, the key fact to remember is, and I think this is what, and Eric will probably back me up on this too, is buyers and sellers and like your veteran is going to always think it's what's left on the loan. So if he's bought down that loan for 10 years, they're like, oh, I only owe 200,000. It doesn't work like that. It goes off what you purchased that home for, right? So when you hear those trigger words, you're like, hey, well, what did you buy the home for, right? It's awesome that you've lived in it for 10 years. It's great you've bought it down, you have all this equity, but what did you pay for it? Because that's what your entitlement will always go off of. And so they can easily do it. Now it does get a little harder if you're in my market in Pinehurst, North Carolina, our average sales price is over $500,000 right now with all the appreciation and everyone moving from Fort Bragg out here. Like it is extremely hard to buy 2 homes and use 2 different VA loans unless you're bringing money down, right? But if you're in places like Fayetteville where you could get maybe a $300,000 home and you can do 2 of those, and then you're moving to Gordon or anywhere like that, like it can definitely be done. You just have to educate on your buyers on that. And it's like, hey, like one of the key things that we're asking, it kind of segues into this a little bit, but it's like, hey, how long do you plan on owning the home? I don't ask like how long do you plan on living in the home? I'm asking how long you plan on owning the home, because all of that appreciation and all of that things are gonna, and if you wrap in all your fees, like Eric was saying, you can easily be underwater. And in my market, my rents have actually went down or stayed stagnant.
Mm.
Like you're that conversation for a veteran who thinks automatically worst case scenario every single time. Like they're like, what's the worst case scenario in 3 years I have to move or I can't rent it, I can't sell it, right? You got to have that preemptively because that's how you're going to build trust in your clients and they're going to keep coming back to you and they're going to take your word as gospel if you tell them the bad news up front. It's like, hey, like if you buy this and you have to PCS in 3 years if they're still active duty, like you may have to bring $200 a month in rent because your rents, average rents aren't covering it, or you won't be able
Yeah.
to sell it if you wrap in all your fees. That's the biggest thing I'm running into right now is these veterans that are moving. And now, luckily, the Pentagon came out and said, I think it was last summer, that they're trying to reduce the amount of PCSs by like I think it was like 50% or whatever. So
Right.
we're hoping not to see as many people moving every 2 to 3 years. I'm lucky. I've only ever been stationed here. I'm still active duty, but I'm in a little weird bubble.
But you're airborne too, aren't you, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm in third group, so I'm
You're
in
in
Special
third group.
Forces.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
I was about to say, yep.
yeah. So I'm lucky, right? But not many people are lucky like that.
Yeah. And I think, Kyle, being honest and upfront and just having knowledge. And here's the other thing, too, guys. If you run
Mhm.
into something, call Kyle or myself. I answer questions all day long for folks, when it comes to, Valerie, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
Sorry, I could literally just go forever, but question, this needs to be where they are living now or where they are going to.
So, VA loans. So here's the caveat, right? Just like Kyle was stationed downrange, right? So he was somewhere else, right? So Kyle was stationed somewhere else. You can actually purchase a VA loan if your family is in that area. I've had plenty of folks where the spouse and the children were here at Bragg and they were in Korea or they were, somewhere else. So as long as your dependents are somewhere, the VA, they can purchase a home in that area. So they can be wherever. And let's say their dependents aren't even near a military installation, say they're, in Boca Raton, you know what I mean? Then you can still use that VA loan there because they're the dependents of the soldier. So yes, so the VA loan, but you have to have either your dependents there or you have to have orders where you're in that area because they're not going to let, Eric, well, I'm not active duty. They're not going to let Kyle, who's active duty, because there's a difference, right? Even for myself, I can say I'm moving to an area, right? That's different. I'm out. Kyle has orders that says where he's at, when he's supposed to be there. And if he's trying to buy a house in Florida, but Kyle is stationed at Bragg and his dependents aren't there, they're probably going to say no to that. So I
Okay,
hope that
so
They
if
have the
you're in a
answers.
occupancy
situation
limit,
like my
Valerie.
brother, for
Yeah.
example, he was at Bragg actually. But my brother I just talked to him yesterday about it. And I said, I'm hopping on this. I'll ask a bunch of questions because he wants to do basically what Kyle is doing,
Hmm.
but he is like 18 months from being out, 20 years in. And so his thought is, okay, well, can I buy where I'm planning to go to, which is not in Virginia, it's in Florida, so that I can rent it out in the meantime, and then I'm there in a year, and then we can just assume it. So it's not, so he kind of has to wait until he's out or get
Yeah.
something like,
So,
or
Valerie, there's some rules. It's very similar to like
Yes.
a normal loan, right? You have that occupancy limit still. Like you still sign on a VA loan that I plan to occupy this home for at least a year, just like you see in a conventional FHA, all those, right?
Yeah.
Very similar to that. Like, hey, I plan on living there. And that underwriter is going to want to see why you're buying a house in Florida. And it's like, oh, you still have 18 months left until you ETS. You can't fulfill this occupancy rule, right?
Correct.
And I can go down massive rabbit holes of how you can use it now because there's 18 months. Like he could buy something now. If he's at
Mhm.
Bragg, he can buy something in Fayetteville here, have that for that
Hmm.
12 months, move out. And if you go in Fayetteville area to where you don't free up all the entitlement, I mean, there's rabbit holes because you could go down
Yeah.
and do a forced appreciation and in 6 months refi out of your VA loan into a conventional loan and be like,
Yep.
hey, I'm going to refinance because now I have this equity that I built from renovations or whatever, or like just buying a great deal off market, right? Now I can free up my entitlement, right? Because I just refinance out of my VA loan into a conventional loan, right? Done that before.
Hmm.
And I hold that property. I still get better interest rates, because I'm still occupying that home for at least 12 months, right? He's on a tight timeline, but hey, I'm going to occupy this for 12 months. So sweet. Like I fulfill that check block on a conventional loan. Let's say I just now freed up. Now I have an
Hmm.
endless amount what I can purchase with a VA loan. Because the only time, and this is one of those big misconceptions too, we'll tie it back into that cap that, what we were talking about, that
Mhm.
$800,000, that only comes into play when you have one VA loan. If you don't have a
That's right.
VA loan, you can buy a $3 million home as
Yes.
long as you qualify for it. Your financials qualify for it. Right? Like we bought I actually did this with a duplex in downtown Southern Pines. I bought it for like $850,000. Well above that was my only VA loan. My wife and I house hacked and we lived in the front half, Airbnb the back, lived in it for a year, and then we moved. I still own that, zero money down,
That's
right?
right.
Boom. And now I'm just getting cash flow from it. And I bought my primary now with a conventional loan, but that was more of a strategic thing,
Right.
right? Um, but yeah, so
Because you
like,
can use the cash flow from
yep.
the
Yeah.
VA loan.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now,
So
well,
there's ways.
I'm sorry, Cal. Go ahead.
Yeah,
No,
no,
I
I'm
was
done.
going to, Valerie, one of the things you want to tell this is your brother, right?
Mhm.
So if he's getting out in 18 months, he's going to, Cal is absolutely right. He needs to purchase something now. And let me tell you why. Because if he doesn't purchase something now, oh, Tiffany, you good? We hear you, Tiff. Can you
We'll
hear me?
mute her. We're muting her.
Oh, there you go. Okay. You're welcome, girl. Hey, Valerie, he needs to do it now because once he hits under 12 months, they're gonna they're gonna go off of whatever his retirement pay is gonna be, not what his active
Hmm.
duty pay is. So that's gonna make a huge difference. Kyle, do you want to chime in a little bit on that too? Because I think
Yeah.
that's where the missed opportunity is. I think you're on to
Hmm.
something, Kyle, with buying now and then
Yeah.
coming back out.
Yeah, for sure. The minute you hit within 12 months, I mean, it kind of makes sense if you're the bank. It's like, well, you're only going to have this income for 11 months and then you're going to go to 50% or, whatever if he's about 20, he's at 50% retirement. So if he's an E8 or whatever, he's making, 4 grand a month. Well, that 4 grand compared to the 8 grand that he's been making with all this BAH and all that kind of stuff, like that's a huge difference gap, right? But if you're past that 12 months and you got 18 months like your brother, right? Like they're going to go off like what his LES, which is for everyone else, like your W-2 paycheck. That's your pay stub in the
Right.
Army, military. They're going to go off what he makes now. And they're going to see that ETS is 18 months, mainly because also his enlistment window, like there's nothing to say he's not re-enlisting and going longer, right? Or
That's right.
extending and stuff at that point too. But after 12 months, that's that decision factor that everyone knows. If you're less than 12 months out, you're getting out because you're already starting all the out processing stuff.
Mhm.
Like it's
Yep.
crazy. So that's like right now he's in that great bubble to take advantage of something. But I will caution you, right? At that point, he needs to buy off numbers and not off emotions. That's the biggest
Yes.
problems we have with investors, specifically PCSers that want to rent on the backside. They get emotions involved when they purchase something and they don't use numbers. It's like, hey, I'm going
Yep.
to purchase it for this. This is what I know I can rent it for. But they buy it because they walk into like most buyers, right? They walk into, oh, I love this kitchen. It's so open. It's so great. And I was like, well, that doesn't help rent, right?
Mhm.
And
No.
so if you're going to use this strategy, you got to go in with a mathematic mindset for it to work on the back end so you don't get caught on the back end.
Yeah. Because it's going to be huge for 'em. Also, one of the things, and we haven't mentioned it yet, but with a VA loan, you can buy up to a 4 unit.
Well, I
Hmm.
was going to ask, but I didn't want to like hijack the whole conversation. But Kyle
No, no, no,
mentioned
no, no, no. You're
duplex,
good. You're
so
good. Yeah. So you can buy up to a 4 unit as long as they're connected. And actually, in the VA reps, I have a client right now, retired lieutenant colonel. He's got some property in New York, right? That was left to him, some land. And we're looking now, and the lender just looked in the VA rec, and I didn't realize this, but you can actually buy it if it has a commercial front on the bottom and the 4 units above. You can buy the entire building together. Um, as long as you're
seriously,
gonna, as long as you're gonna occupy one, that's the most important
Hmm.
part.
that goes for anything. So duplex, quad, any of that, as long
Hmm.
as you're occupying one portion of it. Okay.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. And that's, I think, one of the biggest services we can do when we get, like, when I get a younger, like 18, 20-year-old soldier, like, if I can just lay out the math of, like,
That's right.
hey, if you, like, you're single, right? Like let's say you're married, like my wife and I, when we started, like we house hacked all the time and we were sacrifice this, but like you're building this rental portfolio that like I hate, like when I started this conversation, I hate when I see a military member get out after 20 years and they have to go work somewhere else and they don't get that freedom that they've sacrificed so much for, right? Like that blows my mind. And really, it's just one good educated decision at that first home purchase that can free up a
Yes.
boatload. Because honestly, if you do the math to retire with the 4% rule based off of, Bill Bangen's 4% rule of retirement, that service member is going to have to save $4,000 to $5,000, right? To make this a month, almost 4 grand a month to retire based off the 4% rule and live the same life they live 20 years from now, right? Like, I don't know if anyone knows how much an E2 makes in the military, which is a private in the military. That's like double their actual paycheck, right? Like
Yes.
that's double than what they make. Um, so like it's not doable, but with real estate, it is 100% doable with the VA loan, which
Absolutely.
is why it's so powerful.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I think we transition a little bit from that though too, and talk. I would love to talk just myths that people have and
Mm.
why our offers are not getting accepted, right? Because like
Yes.
I remember when I first used my VA loan, kind of like Eric, or like I was 21 in Columbus, Ohio. I was in the National Guard, came back, and I was like, I'm tired of paying rent. I'm a junior at Ohio State, just ready to mingle. Didn't know my wife at the time, right? And I was like, man, I'm buying a house, right? Got this full-time job, kind of like Eric was saying, with a piece of paper, right? But I had this powerful VA loan that I knew nothing about. Um, but I would put offers and offers and offers, and no one really knew the VA loan. They just saw the VA loan, and they're like, nope, we're not doing that. We're not doing that. Like it's so much stipulation. They take longer to close. The appraiser is going to come in and
Hmm.
nitpick everything that's wrong with my house. And oh, it's Kyle Kline, he's a 20-year-old, right? And he has no money because he's putting no money down. When in reality, I
Yep.
just got back from a 12-month deployment in Afghanistan. I had $60,000 sitting in my bank account as a reserve. I just didn't want to use it to put it as a down payment because I wanted to renovate the home. Um, and I tell you that story because if my agent just educated herself, and now I'm still very good friends with this agent. She is my agent up in Ohio for my investment properties, but now she knows, but if she knew a little bit about the VA loan
Hmm.
to frame that VA conversation when I send an offer to a seller who has no clue what a VA loan is, just believes these myths, right? Up front, like I could have won those offers. They were great offers. And we weren't in a COVID market. This was 2000 like 15, right? So it was not like huge, right? But I think that's the biggest disservice we can do if we're not familiar with it. We know the sellers aren't familiar with it, and it's just, hey,
Right.
what are the myths, and how can I predict what my that seller conversation is going to be to their when they present my offer, and how can I just pick up the phone and like preemptively be like, hey, I know it's a VA loan, right? Like, but hey, like, did you know this is the most securely backed loan, and they have a higher close rate than any other conventional loan that's backed by stats. Um, and like things like that. And I was like, oh, I know, everyone's worried about the appraisal and like the closings take so long. Well, the fact that everyone misses is a VA appraisal to schedule takes longer, but these things can close. And my lender here that does them all the time closes in 21 days
In
or
1 days.
30
Yep.
days, right? Like, yeah, it takes the appraiser a little bit longer to get out there because of the process to order the appraisal, but they close just as fast, if not can be faster than a normal conventional loan.
Yeah.
Um, and then the perceived value of the buyer having no money, like that's me, right? Like I just didn't want to tie my money up into a property. I wanted to use that for other things. I put it in a thrift savings
Hmm.
account and stuff like that, right? So if we know these perceived perspectives of the VA loan and we can present that loan for our buyer to the seller and it's like, hey, I know what you're thinking, right? It's a VA loan, right? But hey, like I don't know if you know, but on the 1st of May with this appraisal contingency and stuff, the VA just came out and redesigned everything. And now they're not considering peeling paint, which is the biggest pain in the butt. If you've ever done with a VA
Right.
loan, appraiser like, oh, it's peeling paint. This house is unsafe. And he's like, okay, whatever. Like I did this in Fayetteville. I bought my old medic on a team. I was out there spray painting like gut like little blinds on a house from peeling paint on a shed that he was tearing down. And I was like,
Right.
this is ridiculous. Well, that's no longer a thing. They actually made it a little bit easier for veterans to buy a house because now
Mhm.
peeling paint's not a thing really anymore unless it's crazy. And if it was built after 1978, so the lead-based paint, right?
Yeah.
Um, Sheds are no longer considered like part of the property and stuff like that. Radon for builders, that was a big thing that's coming. So there are things that are changing to make the veterans a little bit better. And before, now with the NAR settlement, obviously everyone knows like,
Right.
hey, now VA buyers weren't allowed to pay their agents commissions. Well, now they are, right? So now,
Correct.
but it has to be done in cash. So if we ever run into that, I have never run into that to where a seller is not offering a buyer agent commission of some extent yet, right? I think it's coming, right? It's just going to take some time. But that buyer is now, that veteran buyer is now allowed to bring cash to pay you at closing if you had
Right.
to. Right? So now we're even more competitive. Obviously, we can ask for that for some seller disclosure, seller concessions and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, and I think if we frame it and we just present to our buyers and our sellers or our offers, like we already know what they're thinking about the VA and all these myths. Well, let's just
That's
figure
right.
out how we can help predict those and help our clients get that offer one because it is one of the best loans and it's backed by it's
Yeah.
the most secure loan that we offer, right?
And typically lower interest rates.
Yeah, lower interest rates because it's the most secure, right?
That's right. And that's funny because I was just on the call with another agent in reference to she had me actually, we popped on the phone to talk to her seller because he's a veteran, but he didn't understand VA loan assumptions. He didn't understand advertising because when she said, hey, I'm not getting any showings on this property, right? So she's not getting any showings. First thing I asked, I said, what type of loan is it, right? She says it's a VA loan. So, I said, well, what's his interest rate? What's his payment? All of a sudden she tells me it's a 3.1 interest rate. And I'm like, and she's not advertising it. She put it on to advertise it from no showings to 5 showings instantly. Because now people are like, oh, well, let me see what's going on there. Because I did tell her, just put assumable loan 3.1. I didn't say VA. We want to get the attention there. I got to get you to the dinner in order to try to feed you, right? So, but that's one of the things too. I think that's very important for us the education piece of it, because there's so many little nuances that, like, we built 2 duplexes in Harnett County, right? 2 duplexes in Harnett County. I don't know if anybody else knows this. Last year, there hasn't been any duplexes built in Harnett County before we built those in probably about 6 or 7 years, new construction, that is, right? So one was a cash deal, one was a VA. Client out of Fayetteville came up. So I'm on the listing side of these two, right? So of course, the VA appraiser comes back. We had him for 425. He comes back at 405. So we have both of these going, the cash deal. So what did I do? I closed out the cash deal first. That was 425 and sent him that comp. Then they reappraise, because I've done, and Kyle, you've probably done this too. I've done a number of these tide waters, is what they call them, where you have to come in and the VA says it becomes lower. I even had one where the CEO of PwC, he's a good friend of mine, my fraternity brother. We were buying his, came in $80,000 under, and the lender, because the lender was experienced, the lender said, hey, this is what we're going to do. We're going to write a letter to VA. The veteran wrote the letter to VA, then said, hey, I believe it's worth this. They actually brought it all the way up to where it was only a $10,000 gap, just from the letter from the veteran to the VA, because the lender had the experience of knowing how to write these letters, where it wasn't from the lender, it was directly from the veteran writing to the VA, and then they bumped up the value just based on that. But those are all the little nuances, in the background that a lot of people don't really know. But that's why we're having these education sessions with you guys right here on Empower, right? So, but it is one of the most powerful loans that are out there, and it is underutilized. So if you know someone like my father-in-law, retired command sergeant major, right? He was 82nd, all that good stuff. Then he went to New York, educate. He's never used his VA loan. Never. So guess what? I'm on him about right now. We're looking for a property right now for him. He's almost 80 years old, but why do I want him to use his VA loan? Because most likely he's going to leave it to my wife and I when he passes on from here, the property that he purchases. So that's one of the things where don't leave, because once the veteran passes away, unless he's, married, the spouse, there's some, where the spouse can actually use the VA loan on behalf. There's some other little nuances there. But if people have VA loans, they need to use those VA loans. So any veteran, if they haven't used their VA loan, encourage them, take the information. I know I'm looking at the time, so that's why I'm just encouraged from the information that Kyle, myself have given you, because use it, because it is, to me, the most powerful and most valuable asset for a veteran who has served.
Hey, Kyle, Eric, can I add something really quick, just like for my little nugget? Guys, whenever you're working with VA loans, I love this, by the way. Thank you both so much. Whenever you're also working with veterans, it's important to ask them if they're already out of active duty, like ask them if they rate any type of disability, because if they
Yes.
do rate disability, so the VA has what's called a funding fee in it. So it's kind of like a USDA loan or something like that, where they rope it into the loan. And every time you use your VA loan, your funding fee goes up. However, if you rate disability, which the lowest rating you can get is 10%, if you rate any type of disability, you're exempt from the funding fee every time you use your VA loan. So active duty is not you don't need to worry about rating there, but if they're already out, make sure you
Yes.
ask if they rate disability, because they're not going to have to pay their funding fee. And actually, a lot of people don't know this, but if you rate disability, you are exempt from paying an appraisal fee also. And so you just
Yes.
have to go to the VA and tell them that. And then if they're 100% permanent and total disability, then they don't pay property taxes as veterans on cars or on
That's right.
homes, which make a really big difference. So if they're already
Well,
out, double check about that funding fee.
Where are you right now? What state?
I'm in South Carolina. Okay, I should have preferenced that.
You
They
said
don't pay them
you
in
and
South
where now?
Carolina.
South Carolina.
South
Okay.
Carolina.
They still make
Yeah.
us pay a little something here if you're 100% in North Carolina.
Yeah,
So,
okay.
but
So
but they're
North
getting better.
Carolina,
They're
but
getting
in
better. They're
South
getting better.
Carolina.
And
Yeah.
I know
So,
Texas
but
is
that funding
100%
fee is
also.
really big. And then the funding fee also gets roped into your loan. So your pre-approval, let's just say it's 300,000. Your funding fee may be, 8,500, and they wrote that into the loan.
Correct. It's huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think like as we walk off here, some big key takeaways we didn't get to today that like I know we wanted to was like, hey, I know Valerie talked about, the investment strategy of it. Really there's some sweet things that veterans can take advantage of too. You guys all know like the Taxpayer Relief Act of 1977, where like, hey, you live in it 2 out of the last 5 years, and that profit when you sell it, right, is tax free up to like $500,000 if you file jointly with your spouse, right?
Mhm.
With military that are on active duty, that actually gets a net positive of 10 years, right? So so they have 2 out of the last 15 years, if they're still active duty, to claim all that, right? So like when we buy a house at your first duty station or whatever, and your first house and stuff, and those people want to build wealth, like a lot of E1, like threes that are married and stuff, these privates, very low ranking that qualify because they have a wife, can go buy a place in Fayetteville or whatever, right? They can hold that thing for 15 years, well, 14, let's say, depending on the market, right? They need to sell it within that 15th year if they're still active duty. So before they even got out, right? They can sell it and claim all that money tax free, right? And like that's huge because now you can roll that over into another
Right.
property, or you can roll that into your bank account. You don't need to do these 1031 tricky things, right? Like that guy.
Federal taxes.
It's tax free up to $500,000. And I'm sorry if you're going to make more than $500,000, I don't feel bad for you having to pay taxes over $500,000 on a profit over property, right? Don't feel bad. Sorry. But yeah, so that's a huge thing I think veterans don't realize when they come to you as the expert. It's like, hey, should I sell this or should I rent it? Just dropping that nugget is going to build so much credibility and so much like trust in you. It's like, oh my goodness, this guy's talking about taxes like as a real estate agent. And like, hey, like if you're still in 15 years, like sell this sucker, and all that appreciation, that rent buy down that you paid, that your tenants paid, is tax free. Sign me up.
Yeah.
Even if it still makes
Right.
sense to sell, just you knowing that one nugget is going to help build that trust in your client, and they're going to be a client for life if you do well, which we're all going to do at maintaining that relationship for over the 20-year gap that they're going to be in.
Absolutely. Great point there, Kyle. Anna. Allison, where you guys go? Hello.
No, I've got a quick question while they're
Oh, go ahead.
So I've got a situation where it's an older gentleman who's a veteran, and he wants to sell his condo to a friend of his And the friend is going to assume the VA loan and let him live there until he's no longer able to live there. He's in his 80s. Can you assume that VA loan as an investor?
Wait. So how old is your client? He's in his 80s,
Hmm.
and he wants to let a non-veteran assume the loan,
Hmm.
and he's
Because
going to
he
let him
wants the
live there
cash.
until.
He's trying to get the cash out. He
Mhm.
wants the
Oh,
cash now so he can give the cash to his grandsons. And then he's going to continue. It's a really good deal for him, I think. He's going to continue to pay what he'd been paying as his monthly mortgage payment, which isn't very much.
I think
So he's no longer able to live there.
I think the biggest issue that they may run into, because he can give up that entitlement, on there, because it sounds like the guy's going to let him live there until,
Yeah, he's
he's
not
going
well
to.
right now. So yeah.
Oh, okay. So the biggest issue is making sure, because they're going to ask, I'm sure, if that investor is going to occupy that home
That's what I was thinking
as
too.
his primary. Now, whatever they say, however they say do it, that's between them and Jesus, right? So,
Okay.
I don't, but I know that's going to be one of the things that pop up. So that's something that you might want to advise them of, and going from there. And people make their own decisions, and we move on from there. But I'm
Mhm.
just letting you know they're going to ask that question.
Okay.
Yeah. There's other options, I think, too, that you could look at that specific situation, though, too, is like, do you have to assume the VA loan? There's nothing that says you can't do other investment strategies like a rent to own on it until he passes or something. But I don't know that, like, the math behind what
Yeah.
he has, interest rates, how much he owes, and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of variables in there that would help advise.
Not
But
very
there's,
much. No, I mean, there's a lot of cash sitting there for him that he
yeah,
wants to
So he
get out
wants
of
the
it.
cash.
He wants to
Yeah.
yeah.
cash out, set up investment accounts for his grandsons and, kind of teach them about investing and then
Mm.
live there until he can't live there anymore. He has really bad PTSD. It's awful.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's going
I'd
to be an
share the same
interesting
thing
one.
with Eric. Yeah, is like they're probably going to have you sign like, I intend to occupy this place within 3 months or whatever. And then that would be like the ethical, like, hey, like, are you going to sign that? Right? Like, because like you
Right.
can't really sign that if you don't plan on doing it because you don't know if he's going to live for 10 more years, right? Like, you don't know.
Exactly.
Um, so that's where you could potentially look at, assuming like a rent to own scenario where the buyers then just put like a big down payment down, right? And it's like, hey, here's a down payment for me to secure this. Whenever you pass, I get this loan, right? And you could do something like that. You could have your buyer do a cash out refinance potentially and pull that equity now. Um, and then I would also argue, like, is it worth him actually doing that? Or just, I get like we want to train and teach the younger generation how to invest and stuff, but if he does pass and stuff, that home now is a stepped up in basis for whoever inherits too. So when they buy it, they're paying that step up basis. They're not going to pay taxes on it. Now they can invest in something else too. So
Yeah.
there's a
Can
couple
I add
couple different
something
strategies.
too, guys?
Yeah.
So what I was thinking was, you don't want anybody to be in a situation of mortgage fraud, but why don't they just
Hmm.
look at another vehicle like going to get the
Hmm.
property in, deeded into a trust, and that guy gives him the cash because when the loan when he inherits a property through the trust, right, it's just going to flow right through to the next guy. He's going to take that loan anyway, not have to do any assumption of the loan. So he could give him the usage of it for his life, but give him cash now. They could put it in a trust, and it's just going to flow to the guy, the investor, quote, that gave him the money.
Okay.
Does anybody understand like what I'm saying about that?
Yeah, I
Because
think that
I
would.
think once you get real complicated into
Mhm.
assuming that, and it's not really much of an arm's length transaction, he's not leaving the property, he's staying
Mhm.
there. This is like a much cleaner way to do it. Put it in a trust. It'll flow from him when he dies. They'll both be part of that trust. Nobody else touches it. And then he's already given them the cash and he's going to get the loan anyway if there's a loan left when the guy dies.
Yeah. And I mean, it's complicated.
Yeah.
He also like the guy was going to just pay cash, but he's waiting on selling a property, so he'll probably have the cash in 6 months. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like those type of situations. Makes you,
Makes you
get your
think.
juices flow. Yeah. Oh, there she is. Hey, Anna.
Hey, sorry.
No, no,
Sorry.
you're good.
I ran to like refill my coffee and I was like, Rachel was streaming in the back and I was like, ooh, awkward pause, awkward pause. Guys, thank you so much for your time and your expertise this morning. Guys, we'll get this edited and up on YouTube tomorrow, so you can go back and get your nuggets again or share it with someone that wasn't here that you might be beneficial for. Kyle and Eric are both super easy to get a hold of, and I know both of them welcome the opportunity to help other agents. So if you run into a situation where you're like, man, I wish I had their brains for a few more minutes, like I'm sure they'll give them to you. If you have referrals in the Fayetteville area, Pinehurst area, these guys are top notch. So make sure you go look them up on socials, give them a follow. And thanks, guys, for being here. Next week, we've got Taylor Lomprez on next week to do lead generation like through your calendar app. Week after that, Nina Gervais is going to be here to do some like real good mindset stuff with you guys. So we've got 2 really great weeks. We're going to try to really make sure before some of you get into squirrel mode come summer, which no one on this call is going to do that, but really make sure that we get you all the content that we can in these next few weeks to keep you centered during what I like to call Mayvember, where the end of the year just turns into crazy town. So thanks, guys, and happy Wednesday.
Take care.
I appreciate you so much.
Thank you, guys. This was wonderful. Hope to see some of you in Charleston next week.
Can't wait.
Charleston.
We're taking over, baby. Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.